What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. It's nice and miserable out here, but I'm doing fine. I got my Gore-Tex on, and I wanted to be out in a nicer setting for this series of videos, which appropriately enough is all about stoves and the stoves that I like to use while I'm out and guiding in the wilderness. So in this series, I wanted to talk mostly about propane stoves and white gas stoves. Those are the ones that I use, and I know that there's wood burning stoves and denatured alcohol stoves and all sorts of extra things out there. Personally, in my line of work, you don't really get to use those stoves too much. One is the alcohol stoves aren't really great for melting water, and they also aren't quite powerful enough to really get the water boiled fast enough. Wood burning stoves are kind of completely useless for me because a lot of times I'm up in the Alpine where there's really not that much to burn. So these are the stoves that I use in my personal quiver. A lot of the times I can use my guide services stoves, like whoever I'm working for will give me a stove that's kind of part of your standard agreement. So most of the time I'm able to save wear on my personal stoves that I own which is really nice. However, usually when I'm going out with just one or two clients on more high-end private trips, I'll end up using my own stove anyway. A lot of times your guide service will also give you really large pots and just more industrial type devices, so that can make it a bit harder to carry, and you don't need a 2-gallon pot for 3 people, so it's nicer to use your own stuff in that case. Let me start off by talking about context. So like I said before, it's usually white gas or isopro butane gas that I use. Most of the time at the start of the season, like in spring, so that'd be April, May, sometimes March. I'll teach some classes in March sometimes. And then moving into not so much June, maybe the first part of June, but that's usually kind of my white gas time when I'm melting snow or having big groups of people. So by big groups of people, I'm talking about maybe me, another guide, and then 3 clients each. So that would be 8 people or more. And then that's when I really like the white gas stoves. Another example would be melting a lot of snow for a lot of people, and then that's when these white gas stoves can really be good for that. There are definitely times where I'm melting snow with isobutane situations, and that's like late season, or if it's just me and 1 or 2 other people, then I'll just bring out like a propane stove. It also depends on the objective a lot. If I'm doing non-technical mountaineering type thing, I'm more likely to bring out kind of the bigger, heavier stove versus a more technical trip when I have to carry like rock gear and ice gear and whatever, and then that's when I'm more likely to go for the isopro stove. And so a number of factors will play in, but generally I'll start the season with white gas and end with the canister stoves, just for the way how things work out. When you're gonna scoop up water in your pot and throw it on the stove, that's when the canisters are really nice. Okay, so here I am. I'm on my little rock table. I want to preface this by I got 3 stoves I'm gonna show you, and they're all MSR stoves. That's kind of the brand that I like the most. Very time tested, and they just work really well. All right, so the first stove I want to talk about is the MSR WhisperLite. Here it is. So I like this stove a lot because it's more quiet than the other alcohol or white gas stoves. I also like how I can mix and match the pot. So this is the standard pot that I use with this stove. Fits on quite nicely. I also like it because I can just take the whole bag that the stove comes in and I put it in the pot, and then I can just give this pot to a client, and the stove's fairly protected. Also, it's a pretty robust stove, so that's really nice. Part about these things is MSR makes pretty robust stoves that can handle a lot of abuse. Of course, these white gas stoves tend to handle a bit more abuse than the isopro stoves or the canister ones. So that's nice if you have a clumsy client. What's really nice is you can also field clean this. You know, you can take the spirit cup and twist it off just like that, and then you can actually clean this stove in the field if it's not quite working right. Whereas the canister stoves, you know, you're kind of hosed. If they aren't working right, you just got to make it through the trip. But yeah, so this is the first stove in my quiver. I'll bring this out. It's even nice when you do have running water early season, because you can just break this out. You get a giant pot like this, and you can boil tons of water. And this is also a stove that I may pair with a canister stove, whereas like I can do this at night and melt a bunch of snow, and then in the morning when I just have to get up, quick summit, turn around, I can use the canister stove to quickly boil water. So this is a really nice stove to have. This is also the universal stove, so I can change out this piece and change out the jet in there, and I can make this into a canister stove in itself. So if I run out of white gas, I can bring those two parts and then use canister fuel with it. So that's actually a really nice feature. This is the WhisperLite Universal. So here's my next stove I'm talking about. This one looks pretty new because it is. I actually just bought this, and I've only turned it on once just to make sure that it actually works. But this is the MSR XGK, as many people have seen. It's quite more burly, it's more robust. And the big thing about this is it's a freaking jet engine coming out of the cup right here. And so this is like really useful for melting snow and big pots of water. So I can bring a pot. This is the only pot I brought with me, but I can bring one that's bigger than this. This XGK can handle a bigger one. And the fact that this thing is a jet engine just like pouring out flames and heat and everything. So this is a really great stove for melting snow. So this is definitely my early season choice, and I'll bring this out almost every trip that involves some sort of melting snow at some point. The exception being if I'm working with really small crews on a technical climb, then I'll just melt snow with my canister stove. But if I'm big groups, they don't even have to be that big. I brought these things out with like just me and 2 other clients before, but on the right objective with melting a lot of snow, really early season when you're out on Baker and March and stuff like that, this is where it's really nice. You got to melt a ton of snow. You can get a lot of heat, especially with the windscreen that goes around it. And one thing that I'd like to do, I only own one of these right now, but I would like to buy a second one, so that way I can nest the two together in order to make a bigger pot with more heat, with more snow. So it's not recommended by any company to nest 2 stoves together, but it is something that gets done a whole lot, especially in the guiding world. So large groups, it's something that we do. And generally I'm using the Services XGK, so mine can stay nice really long. But this is the next stove, the XGK. All right, so moving on to my final stove, the one that I use while guiding and just out regularly. It's the MSR, what's this called? Reactor stove. So this one's a canister stove. Right there, you put the canister in. Super warm on the, I don't know what this is called, the grill, I'm gonna call it. And then it's really cool how it can nest with the pot, just like that. So one thing with the white gas stoves that some people would consider a downside is the fact that you have to have a separate windscreen around it to hold in wind, and then also to keep out the wind, but also to help hold in heat. Whereas this stove, this nesting system right here, you can just stick the pot on the stove and it kind of takes care of that for you. One downside is when the stove is really cold, or when the pot is wet, or a little bit of both, high winds, it can be hard to actually light this thing and get it to stay lit. So I have a few tricks for that. I do plan on, this is just like the coverall video, and I'm planning on making separate videos for the white gas and the and the canister stoves, just to talk about them a bit more in depth. This is just like the stoves that I use while I'm out working. But yeah, this thing is something that I'll bring out mid-season to late season, and then I'll bring it out, you know, any other time of the year depending on the objective. So this is definitely one that I use a whole lot. One thing I like is the pot selection. I have a few more pots here. Whoop. Just to grab one for an example. So a bigger pot, and it gives you more options, but you can just buy the pot and then use the same burner. So that's really nice. It's kind of helps out with the investment, because one thing that folks don't think about, you know, is white gas stoves. Another thing that will drive people away from them is the fact that it's kind of an investment. You have to buy the fuel, you have to buy the pump thing to put the fuel in, you have to buy the actual stove and a pot, whereas this comes in a set of just like $200 or something like that. So you know, it'll come with the stove itself and a pot to work with, a lid, you know, everything you need. So if price point is more of your thing, this is a little bit better, but these they can have their downsides, and so that's why it's nice to actually have a selection of pots. All right, so that's going to do it for the first video. Again, just wanted to talk about the stoves that I use. It's the three main ones: the XGK, the WhisperLite, and the Reactor stove. And those are the main stoves that I use while I'm out working in the Pacific Northwest for, you know, for the whole season and into the winter months. I don't really have a winter specific stove. That would probably be the XGK if I was out and about in the mountains during the winter. But these stoves kind of work year round for me. And some folks like to use the Dragonfly a lot because of the spacing between the stove. It's really great in the covered area, and you can just like get huge pots of water. Most of these stoves that I have don't really have much of a cooking function, so I can't really just throw them or put, I don't know, like a steak dinner on them and cook it really well, because they're more about just boiling water and making snow melt fast. So that is a bit of a downside to them. The WhisperLite, a little bit, you can flicker it out a bit. The Reactor stove and the XGK have almost, or pretty much no dial in or flicker to them, so it's literally just on or off, and they will just blaze your water out. So, and for most of the time in Alpine world, that's kind of all you need. If you wanted to focus more on a cooking stove, you could look into like the Dragonfly, or the WhisperLite works a little bit more. But for the most part, none of these stoves are exactly cooking stoves. Yeah, you'll notice how it's just three stoves. I know a lot of people like the jet boil stove systems, and I think the Micro-Mo and their Sumo is pretty good. I have a Micro-Mo. It's broken now, but I used one for a long time as my main stove, and you know, it got the job done. I thought it was really nice. The pot was a little small, but you can fix that by bumping up to like a Sumo. That would be really good for groups of 3 or 4. The Mini Mo is also a nice one for, again, like groups of maybe 3. Yeah, about 3 or less. I do also have the Flash Jet Boil system. I don't know where it is right now. It's somewhere in my storage unit, but I mean, since I got the Reactor stove, it's pretty much replaced all my jet boils, so I'm not really sad about that. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more. I have a lot of videos about climbing, things in general, some ski stuff, camping, backcountry type things, how to pack a pack, or you know, whatever. So feel free to take a look at all the other videos I have in my channel, and stay tuned for more. Hoping to make a good series coming out. So thanks for your support, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.